Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
I'm James Campbell. I work with the Irish Farmers Journal, and we've just finished a breakfast event at Balmoral Show, the first time we've done it for this podcast. I have three, I'll call them local dignitaries here, men in influential positions. We have Jim Nicholson MEP. We have Billy Robson, the president of the RUAS, which runs Balmoral Show, both farmers in their own right. And Wesley Aston, recently appointed Chief Executive of the Ulster Farmers Union, who's also from a farming background and has a farm in County Armagh. And I just want to ask them their impressions of the event, first of all, during which we had presentations by our editor and Chief Executive, Justin McCarthy, and some other colleagues, trying to look at the bigger situation beyond 2015 and globalisation of agriculture. Billy, would you like to comment first?
Well, first of all, I think the function this morning has had a new dimension to us in the Royal Ulster for the future shows. It was tremendously impressive. I think it was very, very stimulating, all the discussion we had, and I think 2015, as I see it, is a year of uncertainty because of all the changes that are coming about. Perhaps from now on we can plan and see a clearer future of how we're going to operate in the new system, particularly from next year onwards.
There was a very strong message coming through, I thought, from Justin McCarthy that really the current CIP reform is flawed and it's making the best of a bad lot for maybe the next 5 years, but the next reform would be a completely different kettle of fish. We'd be looking back more at trying to get the support into the hands of the farmers who are really doing the producing, rather than the way this one has worked out. And I just wondered if, as a member of the European Parliament and indeed a leading figure in the Agriculture Committee in the European Parliament, Jim, how did you read that and how would you react to that?
First of all, to endorse what Billy has said about this has been a great event here this morning and certainly added something to the show. I think the big challenge for agriculture, we have now got a new commissioner. We're going to have we call him in Europe a mid-term review in 2017. This will be the opportunity to lay the ground and the basis and the foundation for what I believe will be the next major review of the CAP beginning in 2019, running right through to 2021-22. While we've had an awful debate on this occasion about active farmers and who could actually produce and everything else, we will not have that the next time because the European taxpayer is not going to continue to fund people not to produce food. They will to produce food. There are many challenges out there, the labelling, and we know why that's there, but the industry has got to be more responsive, has got to be more aware of what's happening in Europe. They are too slow to react. A lot of what's happening at this present moment of time on labelling, which they have known about since 2011, has been the responsibility of the industry and indeed the local, the governments on both sides of the border. We have a North-South Ministerial Council that should be identifying these problems, should see them coming down the road and should be moving to put them right long before we have a major issue on our hands.
Quite apart from the predictions about the need for change in the CAP, we also had reference to the TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership with the USA, and I think there have been 8 rounds of negotiations already on that, and the 9th one comes up this summer. Just in the context of that, as well as the CAP predictions, Wesley Aston of the UFU, what would be your feeling? Did it take you into a new dimension, the thoughts of transatlantic trade being either good, bad or indifferent?
I think in broad terms, James, we have to recognise that at this stage globalisation is happening, trade deals will happen. The issue is about trying to both minimise the impact that will have, but also seize the opportunities that it presents. CAP reform, the very issue about going back to recognising that without CAP support we can't actually be viable, so they need to maintain that going forward and have a viable production base in order to deliver the extra food that the world needs is critical. Within a Northern Irish context, we have our Agri-Food Strategy Board going for growth report and trying to maximise government support in terms of moving our industry on, both in terms of marketing and also getting the state of our farms up to that which can actually produce efficiently and effectively. But equally, I think within our own industry ourselves, we as farmers have to recognise that we need to become more efficient and effective in terms of what we do. We need to innovate, we need to market better, and I think that's one of the things that we have within our control, and we should be looking to try and do that irrespective of what happens in those other things in any event. So 3 major challenges for us going forward, but I know we're up for the battles ahead and that we will deliver.
I think there was also an interesting and sort of controversial point brought up about the land tenure system in Ireland, North and South. And really, let's face it, it's the $64,000 question. How do we get the land into the hands of those farmers who would use it most productively and therefore benefit the whole economy, the whole rural economy and the whole economy of Ireland, north and south? And Billy Robson, in fact, made some comments on this himself. I'd like to throw it over to him now.
Yes, James, this was thrown up very clearly this year. A lot of men, maybe particularly dairymen, that had been depending on quite a large acreage taken in Conacre. Some of the landowners decided to keep it themselves and draw the money themselves, and they were left sitting high and dry without access to that land. There's an awful lot of land in this country, maybe not farmed or managed to its best and most productive. That land should be made available by some means or other on a longer term basis to the efficient people that are showing, no matter how hard and how difficult times are, they can still make a profit. Those are the men that in the long term will lead this industry forward and allow us to go for growth and see expansion really taking place on the ground.
Yes, Billy, and I just want to throw that over to Wesley Aston too, because he's really at the coalface. It's his members we're talking about here, some of whom, let's face it, are doing a fantastic job, very efficient, but cannot get their hands on the land resource that they need to expand their business.
I think land mobility is something that we obviously need to look at. We have come from a long-standing system that has lasted for years and actually served the purpose well. But we have entered a new era, and it's really a case of trying to see how best we make sure that that land is available for active producers, whether it's through share farming arrangements or simple land mobility arrangements, taxation, that type of thing. But obviously within the UK, we're only a small region within it and don't have that sort of autonomy ourselves at this stage. So we have to look at what we can do, but certainly land mobility is a big issue going forward, so that we do maximise the production from that land. And obviously in terms of owned land versus rented land, the owned land will be looked after much better than the rented land, because why would you put capital investment into land that somebody else might take off you? So there's a big issue there. A third of all land in Northern Ireland that is farmed is on a rented basis, and it's an issue that we need to address going forward.
Maybe to finish up, Wesley, you touched on the need for legislation. I mean, is there in any way envy on your part that the government in the Republic of Ireland has this within its own remit to change the legislation and perhaps bring incentives, tax incentives in for leasing, whereas you are, as part of the UK and Northern Ireland, don't maybe have that freedom? And I suppose the follow-on question, could you ever see devolution of taxation to the extent that you would have that freedom?
I think that's obviously a difficult question from a Northern Irish perspective, given the history of the region. But that aside, I do think that we have to look at the balance between landowners, many of who are retired farmers or retiring farmers who rent out some of their land, and equally the need for those particularly younger people who want to try and grow their businesses and actually get a foothold in the market and the industry in the first place. So there's a balance to be struck, but I don't necessarily see that taxation powers will be coming our way anytime soon, unfortunately.
Okay, that's a straight answer to that question. I think Billy would like to comment as well.
It's something, as we all know, the pattern in the last few years that about 80% of the net farm income has come on the basis of EEC support. I don't think that is either healthy or sustainable. I'd like to see us reach a stage where we don't get more than 50% of our net profit in the form of support, not by reducing the amount of support, but allowing our industry to grow and make greater profits from actually that what we do, and that is practical farming.
Okay, well, I think we've had a good chance to throw two or three of the issues that came up at this morning's post-breakfast discussion for this podcast. I hope anyone listening gets a flavour of the level of discussion that took place. I'd like, just in closing, we're on the morning of the third day of Balmoral Show, and I'd like to wish Billy all the best for a third sunny day at the Balmoral Park here.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.